north to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. What do? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, which is just opinion, yours and mine. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. I hope your Memorial Day weekend was poignant. Mine was. I remembered all the people that gave us this nation, that put their lives on the line and lost them for this nation. That's what Memorial Day is all about. There were an awful lot of people having an awful lot of fun because it was a holiday and so on and so on. And I've always said to myself, I've always said that to do that is fine because you get a day off or two. And you go out and do fun things because you don't have a lot of time to do fun things. But Memorial Day isn't about fun things. Memorial Day is to remember those people who believed in this nation so much that they went to do the nation's bidding in uniform, put their lives on the line, and lost them. Everything we have in this nation is because of those people. So there were a few happy Memorial Day. I don't know that you should say that. Maybe just have a true and good remembrance on Memorial Day. But it's Tuesday, the day after the weekend. And I want to make sure that you understand that life goes on. At some point, you have to pause. Remember these people, but then you have to get on with life. Life is for the living, which is not to denigrate the memories of these great people in any way, shape, or form. It is to realize that the things that led those people to do the things they did, losing their lives in the process, are worth continuing the fight for. And I find that inspirational, especially when the next greatest generation will restore this constitutional republic as a nation of, for, and by the people of the United States. That is our work. Will people lose their lives? Yes. Will people have their lives ruined? Yes. But this nation possesses something no other nation does, and that is freedom and liberty for the people. Opportunity to succeed beyond your wildest dreams. If you have the courage and guts and ability to see what's laid out before you. Those people who say that, you know what, you're not successful because you just haven't been given a chance. They have other motives. I don't know what they're based on. But all I can say is that what we have here is we have something that those people gave their lives for, that we must dedicate our lives to. So let's. This show originates from Fort Worth, Texas. It's a little town down the road from Big Brother Dallas. And we have a completely different attitude about a lot of things in Fort Worth than they do in Dallas. But what I will tell you is that all of this greatness that Texas is, we teach Americans how to be Americans. Individuality, fierce defense of our liberty and freedom. It all starts here. It starts here. If you live outside of Texas, it's hard to understand from the outside looking in. But it's not hard to explain from the inside looking out. We don't have the lives a lot of people around the nation have because we won't put up with it. We simply won't. We simply refuse to believe that there are people out there that are truly our betters. They may be better at some things, but they're not better at the things that we are good at. And what we do in this nation and in this state is we stand for all those things, at the root of which is love of neighbor and fairness. The golden rule. Texas, having been flooded with people from arguably totalitarian states, some trying to escape that totalitarianism, others coming here to try to transplant it. What we do is we find ourselves in a position, and this has happened for the last, half a dozen elections or so, maybe more. What we do is we find people with a smooth line of political rhetoric saying the right things to touch the hearts of people who will defend their freedom and liberty in this state with their lives and not think twice about it. What we do is we vote for these people and they go in and change themselves. And that's what elections are for. By all means, if you feel like you can base your entire political career and the votes of your neighbors who put you in that office on dishonesty, well, I can't do anything about that except vote you out and work for the votes of others to vote you out. And I have a lot of work to do in front of me because of the political stylings of the day. In 2016, the American people rejected the political estate. They sent somebody there to be in the Oval Office of the United States, the president, in fact, the office of president, who quite literally could not get elected dog catcher in New York City. But he changed this nation. He exposed what he called the swamp, which has now been called a sewer, which is nothing more than a totalitarian attempt to remake the nation as a playground for politicians. When they realized the depth of the threat to the political estate handed to them by the voters of America, the first thing they did was they got real quiet. And in the transition time between one presidency to another, formulated what they would do next. And what they did was completely obvious. They sought to overthrow the president chosen by the people of the United States. And in the crazily juvenile, dishonest way of leftist politics, they did so in a way that ignored the precedents they set for the sake of the political expedient that they had to achieve, which was the removal of this man before he upset the entire political apple cart. The European continent was ruled for centuries by a very, very large family of elites who came together through marriage and actual honest honest effort to consolidate and remain in power. And they were successful. They were totalitarian. They were capricious. They were oppressive. They were tyrannical. They were benevolent. They were kind. As the centuries progressed, we, the human people, the humans on the planet, saw all of those things. But at the heart of all of it was my way or the highway, a totalitarian law imposed by the elites. When the people came to the New World, those people seeking to relieve themselves of this tyranny and totalitarianism, they swore they would not have it here. And through brilliant writ, created a nation we live in today. But human nature being human nature, there are people who believe that they are better than everyone else. They ascend to some level of elitism, and they seek to impose that elitism on others. Rules for thee, but not for me. And it's gotten worse over the last couple of decades. Started by 9/11, continued by financial mismanagement, reinforced and exploited beyond all other limitations through COVID-19. And in that process, the degeneracy of the political process, based on the willingness to slap the people of the United States in the face, call half their neighbors racists because they elected the wrong guy. What they did is they put these precedents out there, and one of them reared their ugly head in this great state, the great and mighty state of Texas. And the person at the center of this is a guy named Ken Paxton. As we have this conversation, he is the suspended Attorney General of the state of Texas. He will remain so until the proceedings begin in August of this year. Is he a terrible man? No. Is he a dishonest one? No. Is he someone that has committed high crimes and misdemeanors? Well, it depends on your definition of high crimes and misdemeanors. If the high crimes and misdemeanors are actual crime, no. If the high crimes and misdemeanors are exposing the depths of both the Texas and Washington sewer, oh, by all means, he's guilty. And so he was impeached the other day by people who should lose their jobs forthwith, immediately, unless they have proof. More of this coming up in just a couple of moments. Stay where you are. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Attorney General for Texas, Ken Paxton, has been impeached by what is theoretically a Republican House of Representatives, the Texas House of Representatives, in action last week. It was eerily similar to the impeachments of President Donald Trump, insofar as there was no defense. There is no exposure of true evidence to the people of the United States. There are a lot of stories about the impeachment, but not a lot of stories about any kind of proof when it comes to a lot of different things that he has been charged with. None of them criminal. Some are. They're trying to nail him on the federal government is involved in this. They're trying to nail him on securities fraud. I doubt very sincerely that Ken Paxton had anything to do with securities fraud, but you got to remember something. In federal court, as in any other court, it is not what actually happened in many cases. It's what you can convince a jury or a judge of in many cases. In the case of Attorney General Ken Paxton, some of his supposed aides have accused him of high crimes and corruption. Really. Involved in this, by the way, are members of his family. Does that sound eerily familiar to anyone besides me? I just did a search on Ken Paxton victories over the Biden administration. There are a half dozen on the first page. There are a half dozen of them. The man has done more to defend this nation, both through the COVID era and otherwise, than perhaps anybody else you know. And what he has done is he has earned the ire of the political monster that is doing its very dead level best to establish the new ruling elite, oblivious of the fact that there's not a real American anywhere within the sound of my voice or within the confines of this nation that will accept it. It is quite literally a suicide mission. The people of Texas have seen that the so-called Republicans that they elected to the House of Representatives are not. Now, that's not to say that because of politics, we will suspend any kind of reasoned law enforcement against anyone. No one is above the law. But that's not what's happening here. We know the federal government, in the case of the securities fraud investigation that's going on, strange, that investigation has been going on for a couple of years at this point. They still haven't come up with anything yet. Or they're not talking about it. The objective is not to actually find Ken Paxton guilty of anything. The objective is to create doubt in the minds of the voters, to besmirch his reputation. It's character assassination. At least that's the way it looks. Now you have to understand that a lot of this is, again, political falderall. If it is, however, proven true, that's a different kettle of fish. But I'm going to have to see that for myself. Ken Paxton has been impeached by a so-called GOP-led House of Representatives, the Texas House. Every single one of those people should lose their jobs. The Texas Senate will very likely find him not guilty and restore him to office. But at least he's out of the way until August. It's truly disturbing. More coming up. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will be back in 4 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. We are discussing the circumstances surrounding Ken Paxton. I have given you a great deal of background information, some opinion, some history, some observational. The news, as follows, is something that we should pay attention to. And therefore we will. The actual impeachment is discussed as follows by MSNBC. And as we point out fact and bias whenever we can, I doubt very sincerely that we're going to find much of the former and a great deal of the latter. But that's for you to decide. The biggest problem for Ken Paxton is political. As written by NBC, for Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, the tipping point wasn't his indictment over alleged securities fraud. It was something else. It wasn't the state bar investigation or the evidence that he weaponized his office as Attorney General. It's proving to be the biggest problem for the Republicans, in fact, that several of his top aides have accused Paxton of brazen corruption, which is currently the subject of an ongoing federal criminal investigation. The matter was also the subject of a state House investigation, which last week concluded the state attorney general repeatedly broke the law by, among other things, abusing his office to hide an extramarital affair, doing special favors for a donor, and retaliating against perceived foes. The allegations were serious enough so that the Associated Press reported the GOP-led House in Austin impeached the state attorney general Saturday. Here's the quote. Texas Republican House of Representatives impeached State Attorney General Ken Paxton on Saturday on articles including bribery, abuse of public trust, a sudden historic rebuke of a GOP official who rose to be a star of the conservative legal movement despite years of scandal and alleged crimes. None of this is factual. Oh, there are some facts. There is a criminal investigation going on by the federal government. Is that because Ken Paxton is all of these things? Is he corrupt? Is he weaponizing his office? Is he doing all of those things? No. No. The federal investigation is about Ken Paxton stopping, in great measure, many aspects of the Biden administration agenda for this nation. And therefore, as we know, federal law enforcement is a political tool and very little else. At this time, he is under the baleful eye of those people who believe that indeed he is someone who must be gotten out of the way. And so they're doing their absolute dead level best to make that happen. The scurrilous ideas, for example, that he had an extramarital affair completely belies the absolute ignorance of mainstream media sources like MSNBC from similar scurrilous, horrifyingly terrible, immoral acts by people of, and I'll say this plainly, NBC's own political party. So it's not just that the nation's law enforcement has been weaponized, but so has the mainstream media. Impeachment triggers Paxton's immediate suspension from office pending the outcome of a trial in the state Senate, empowers Republican Governor Greg Abbott to appoint someone else as Texas's top lawyer in the interim. The final tally wasn't even close as the dust settled. Paxton was impeached on a 121 to 23 vote. 121 to 23 vote. The Associated Press report added that he is only the third sitting official in Texas's nearly 200-year history to have been impeached. To be sure, the state attorney general was not without GOP allies. The problem is they struggled to come up with much of a defense. Representative Ronnie Jackson argued that Paxton is the best attorney general in the entire country and fights for Texans. The far-right congressman did not even try to contest the underlying allegations or the evidence. There's no reason to contest the allegations. They can be made up in some private meeting somewhere. And by the way, the evidence, really hard to find. The actual evidence is very, very hard to find. Donald Trump weighed in on Paxton's behalf, calling him hardworking and effective. Hopefully, Republicans in the Texas House will agree this is a very unfair process that should not be allowed to happen or proceed. I will fight you if it does. Good. Not necessarily because I'm a Kool-Aid drinking Paxton supporter, but because I have seen this ugly political process seek to destroy good men doing good work and good women, to besmirch their reputations beyond legal, character assassination. And what that has done in the past leading to this moment is cast at least skepticism on processes like this, thereby weakening them for the future and forever. It's outrageous. It's outrageous and it's awful. The state capitol, GOP State Representative Tony Tinderholt told his colleagues, don't give Democrats another victory handed to them on a silver platter. None of these Paxton allies commented on the merits of the charges themselves. Rather, they said the state attorney general should not be impeached, despite the evidence and seriousness of the allegations, because they see him as a partisan ally. And this turns us back to politics. Nancy Pelosi wanted to remove Donald Trump from office based on the seriousness of the allegations. That's a quote. The seriousness of the allegations? Really? So, in other words, trials don't matter. It's what somebody accuses you of that decisions should be based on. Is that it? Again, the precedents set through the impeachments of Donald Trump reverberate and echo through this nation. Fortunately, at least in the case of President Trump, this didn't work. I doubt very sincerely that this is going to work against Ken Paxton. But all I can say is, is that if they have proof They better go after it, and they better be able to prove it beyond any reasonable doubt, not a political doubt, but any reasonable legal doubt. Had any of these things been true, Ken Paxton would be out of office already. But they're not true. Because the court of law has nothing to do with the court of politics, except when the court of law is used, the trappings of the court of law are used as political weapons. Again, putting a precedent on the table that is at the very heart of every totalitarian society in human history. The reasons that there are so many nations, Europe specifically, that don't do the things that we, the people of the United States, do in this nation is because throughout the centuries, anybody who stood up against oppression and tyranny were immediately beheaded. The use of the term seditious conspiracy in light of true conspiracy among federal officials during the Trump administration gives lie to all of this. And the willingness for the people to be led by governments such as these is eroding at a ferocious rate. The evidence in this impeachment. The evidence in this impeachment is scant. Hard to find. Again, these criminal investigations have been going on, but still nothing. Still nothing. But like I said, if indeed this is true, then okay. Ken, great guy. What were you thinking? If it's not true, there are 123 offices in this Texas House of Representatives that must be changed by the people of Texas at our next opportunity. 123, including the Speaker of the Texas House, Dade Phelan. Donald Trump, Ronnie Jackson, others, Ted Cruz, have all stood by Paxton. There's no reason to comment on the merits of the charges because they are quite literally, at least in my heart of hearts, meritless. There's no reason to argue. All you're going to do is get into a food fight that will escalate until eventually idiots will emerge where human beings once stood. So, the case now heads to the Republican-led Senate. The state attorney general's wife, Senator Angela Paxton, serves as a member. The trial in the chamber will begin no later than August 28th. So, this means that Ken Paxton is out of the way until August 28th. It's May 30th. That's a long time to have Ken Paxton cooling his heels. Gosh knows how long the actual trial will take. We don't have any idea how long it will be, but again, if precedence is any kind of a precursor or a predictor of what is going to happen next, then it will last as long as humanly possible. Remember, the 2024 election is coming. If they can continue dirtying up Ken Paxton, his life, his reputation, his achievements, for as long as humanly possible, then this ignoble, ugly, political mess may indeed have an effect. But there's something else. I keep looking at all of this and I keep seeing things that the Biden family are accused of. I look at all of this and I see this political phalanx surrounding what are un-American and certainly un-Texan ideals based on politics. And I see the same thing happen. I see the same thing happening in Washington, D.C. And all of these things all come back to well-known political philosophies. Accuse your enemies of what you yourself are doing. It's the ultimate in juvenile passive aggression. It's horrifying. It's beneath the dignity of the houses in which these people sit, the agencies they serve, the mission they have, the oaths they have taken. And all of it coalesces around a man chosen by the people of Texas to do the work that he has done brilliantly over these years. It is very likely that Ken Paxton is guilty of nothing except being someone who has been successful against turning back the tide of totalitarianism in the United States. That is his great sin, apparently. But like I said, indeed, no one is above the law. No one. And so, if Ken Paxton can be proven to be guilty in a court of law, not in a court of pathological degenerate politics, then he should be punished. But I doubt very sincerely that any of this is true. What do you think? Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. That's our telephone number. You can find us on the chat room, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. By all means, join us. Tell us what you think. You don't have to agree with me. You may think, indeed, that Ken Paxton is some arch criminal that has weaseled his way into public life and is using his office for his own personal benefit. If you believe that, then by all means say so. But then be ready to give us your reasons, facts surrounding your decision. The disconnect between decision and fact is something this show fights to stop. And we had better be successful in that venture. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast. When I say that, I'm talking about the chat room. I'm so grateful that I was born and raised in a great state like Florida and have lived in Texas for 2 decades. 2 great states. In 2016, people were sick of President Obama and big government. And like we always do when that happens, we correct. It is a self-correcting mechanism, these United States of America. Carter, then Reagan. Clinton, then Bush, although the presidencies of Clinton and Bush accomplished roughly the same things. Obama, then Trump. It's a vicious cycle. Well, you know, the pendulum swings, and the faster it swings, based on information that we have, based on decisions of that come from those pieces of information, they get faster and faster and faster. The problem with it is they get too fast, the clock will explode. And let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's see, we need a solid Republican House and a solid Republican Senate and a solid Republican president in 2025, and the healing can begin. I'm not so sure. The Republican Party hasn't shown me anything that makes me believe, for example, that they can do anything. This latest debt limit garbage, for example. The debt limit garbage, which is about to spill on the United States of America again, is not a defeat for either political party, if you can say that. It's a compromise. But what it is, at least it shows me, a Republican Party willing to essentially moderate Democrat policy and call that a victory. I find it ridiculous. Let's see what else. My state representative, one of the biggest donors to his last campaign was Dade Phelan and his campaign. Yeah, that's called power consolidation, Mikey. I had to track down that to get the results. The bill is H.R. 2377. I had to track that down to get the results of the impeachment vote. Yeah, because nobody's really proud of this impeachment vote, and they shouldn't be. Like I said, if they're not able to bring this home, if they're not able to actually find high crimes and misdemeanors, there are going to be 123 open seats in the Texas House of Representatives. When Democrats get in trouble for some reason, they circle the wagons, defend them to the death. When a Republican gets in trouble, they form a circular firing squad. Mr. Love 825 says, could it be he's guilty? Just maybe. Well, yeah, just maybe. We'll see. Well, once again, the weaponized quote-unquote law enforcement agencies have been investigating and still can't come up with anything. But the investigation hangs out there so the liberal press can point it out, like NBC did earlier today. Could be that he's guilty, but the trial hasn't happened yet. Everything else is speculation. Yeah, for political effect. Corruption from leaders in either party should not be defended or tolerated. Correct. Why is it? Why is it tolerated in the Democrat Party as a matter of policy? Why is that? You'll have to tell me that. I really can't figure that out either. Let's see. Yeah, it sounds a lot like what the Texas House of Representatives did. Sounds a lot like what the FBI actually does. Yeah, it's true. Yvonne points out that the great Mark Davis, easily the best talk show host maybe I've ever heard. And yeah, I realize I just compared him to Rush Limbaugh. But if you haven't heard Mark Davis, well, you're really missing out. He's erudite. He's educated. He's brilliant. But just a handsome devil. Anyway. After Paxson called out Phelan to quit, Phelan turns around and calls for his impeachment. They hate each other. Well, that's great. Nice of them to use the state of Texas as their own personal boxing ring. Outrageous. Let's see. Mr. Love says the Trump impeachment was necessary, but necessary to who? That's fascinating. Was it necessary? Sure. It was necessary from the political process point of view. Donald Trump was disassembling the political state in favor of the American one. Too many people threatened too harshly with too much loss of power. And so they turned themselves into morons trying and contorted themselves around absolutely intellectually dishonest statements of law and lies to try to make it happen, and they still failed. Let's see. I'm tired of impeachments and without real investigation. Me too. When I was first voting, pretty bad look to be wasted while running the Texas House. Yeah. Dave Phelan loves his alcohol. Eric Mann says he thinks I should wave hello. Eric Manly Man. Love you, man. Miss you. People tired of Obama? Obama won 2 terms. Ask people now if they're tired of Obama. I'm just saying. The not-so-great Mark Davis? I don't know. Mark Davis is pretty damn good. I like him. Innocent until proven guilty. Ever hear of it? Well, not in the political world, and that is awful. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. There was a shooting in Florida last night. The politics began immediately, and we're proven wrong. Again. And we'll be talking about that as we continue on this Wells Report for the 30th day of May, year of our Lord 2023. Back in a moment. Thanks for coming, beloveds. I'll see you in just a little bit, okay? Hour number 2 right around the corner. Thanks for listening to the Wells Report, more of which continues in 6 minutes. You found the Wells Report, more of which continues in 5 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will be back in 4 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. What do? We report the news, honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point that out. Both categories. We make commentary, which is not the news. It's just opinion, yours and mine. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Beth Ann is saying that she didn't get a hello. Hello, Beth Ann. Glad you're here. So anyway, Yeah, you can get on the chat room right this very moment and you can say whatever it is that you wish. We would certainly appreciate your commentary. And I'll share it with you. However, there is other news that we must report. Police were holding multiple persons in custody today after a shootout between two groups that left 9 people injured at Florida's Hollywood Beach Boardwalk. The gunfire erupted shortly before 7 p.m., injured 6 adults and 3 children. Authorities say they had planned a press conference to release additional details. In a statement this morning, Hollywood Mayor Josh Levy thanked first responders for their work. Hollywood police have dozens of officers assigned to the beach on busy holiday weekends that allowed for an immediate response that resulted in multiple persons being detained for the incident. The 9 victims were transported to Memorial Regional Hospital and Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital after receiving aid at the scene. The victims were 6 adults, 3 children, according to Yanet Obario Sanchez, a spokesperson for the Memorial Healthcare System. All victims are in stable condition, thank God. Let's see who else is being talked about here. Other officials are saying that 4 children aged 1 to 17 were hit, along with 5 adults aged 25 to 65. One was in surgery late last night, while others were stable. It was not immediately clear whether the hospital was counting the 17-year-old as an adult. Authorities have not yet offered specific details about the shooting suspects or what might have sparked the confrontation. In his statement, Levy said the shooting was between 2 groups from outside the city. And a witness told the Associated Press that several young men were fighting outside a store when one of them pulled out a gun. Quote, "It's completely unacceptable that innocent people spending time with family on a holiday weekend have been affected by a shooting altercation between 2 groups who came into our city with guns and no regard for the safety of the safety and the law that aids the public. Law enforcement agencies are fully engaged in their investigation. I assure you, no stone will be left unturned in bringing perpetrators to justice. We will utilize every available resource to apprehend those responsible." The politics came hard and fast, and for some reason, this has gained enough traction so that it hasn't been retracted yet, at least according to my latest analysis of the situation. California Governor Gavin Newsom was fact-checked by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' spokesman after he blamed the Memorial Day shooting in Hollywood, Florida, on laws DeSantis signed that are not yet in effect. 9 people, including minors, hospitalized after an altercation that escalated to gunfire at the Hollywood Beach Boardwalk. Police detained 1 person of interest in the shooting. Another remains at large. Newsom reacted to reports of the shooting on social media, blaming gun violence on a bill that DeSantis signed in April that eliminates the requirements for an individual to obtain a permit to carry a concealed firearm. He claimed the permitless carry bill that DeSantis signed, quote, removes requirements for background checks, instruction, training, and oversight. I got a couple of things to say here. My day job now, as I look for another radio station or broadcast concern of some kind to put me to work in, say, for example, a larger venue than the one I'm currently occupying. What I can say is this. You have a God-given right to defend yourself, but you had better know how. You better know how. Most of us are very adept at knowing how to shoot. In other words, we, say, for example, pick up a firearm. We point it at a target at various ranges, and we follow the techniques required to make a good shot. But where, when, why requires training. And I assure you that there are facts in that training that you haven't considered. So if you have a weapon, by all means, learn how to use it. This is coming to you from a guy who works at the best training facility, gun range, and retail store for this kind of business, probably in the United States. It's called Defender Outdoors. Go to defenderoutdoors.com. You can see everything you need to see. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant concept run by brilliant people doing brilliant work. But as long as there are places like Defender Outdoors where you can learn all of these skills, there's no excuse for you not to have them. Further, if you make the decision to carry a weapon to defend yourself with, you must also fall back on something that makes America great. And that is this. The single elegant concept. Self-governance requires self-discipline. Just because your political leaders say, you don't really need to go through any of those hoops to be able to carry a gun, you don't have to do that. The Constitution guarantees it. Just because that's out there doesn't mean your responsibilities to learn how, when, where, and why are absolved. Shooting somebody by mistake is a crime. It's not an accident. It's negligence. If you're going to carry that responsibility, you better carry the information in your head that is required to do so responsibly. The good news is 99.8% of the people carrying weapons in this nation have never, ever used them in that scenario. None of them. Hardly. There have been people that have made gigantic mistakes. They're in jail now, reflecting on those mistakes. And then there are people, at least represented by these people in Hollywood, Florida, that simply believe that they have the God-given right to remove somebody from the planet because they don't like them for some reason. Those people end up in jail too, and they should. You can't really do anything about them, but the overwhelming majority of Americans who carry weapons on a daily basis, like me, realize the incredible responsibility involved. And we do the work to be able to do so in a benevolent, yet insistent way. That insistence on our own safety, based on surprise attacks, mainly caused by no reason whatsoever. No reason. So, that being said, by the way, that leads to this point. Common sense gun laws punish those who fail to discharge those responsibilities properly, not people who discharge them properly. The people who carry weapons every day, the 99.8% of us, once again, we're not the problem. The problem is the minuscule minority of people, for whatever reason, who believe that they can settle their differences with a gun. Pass laws to punish them. Don't paint with such a broad brush that you want to completely change the nation for the sake of your politics. Use the law, use the creation of law to benefit the people who do the right thing, instead of punishing the people who do the right thing in this cockamamie idea that by rendering all of us defenseless, somehow we'll have a better society. You are wrong, bordering on real concerns for your thought process. Pass laws, common sense gun laws, that punish people who use them improperly. Problem solved. And yeah, you got to get them through a vote. And yeah, you got to get them signed by a chief executive. And yeah, you got to do all that process. But to short circuit all of this for the sake of politics like Gavin Newsom is doing, it's destructive. It's pathological. And at some level, it is bereft of cogent thought. Just my opinion. So, Gavin Newsom stepped up on social media, blaming gun violence on the bill that was signed by Governor DeSantis. He claimed the permitless carry bill that DeSantis signed removes requirements for background checks, instructions, et cetera, et cetera. Until our leaders, says Gavin Newsom, until our leaders have the courage to stop bowing down to the NRA and exact common sense gun safety, this senseless violence will continue. There's a problem. There's a problem with this. He is the governor of a state that is bereft of common sense. And the idea that there should be more targets for the people who don't care one way or another about any kind of law, let alone what Gavin Newsom calls common sense gun law, which is bereft of it, is, again, intellectually faulty. Here's the tweet from Gavin Newsom. DeSantis signed a permitless carry bill in April that removes requirements for background checks, instruction, training, and oversight until our leaders have the courage to stop bowing down to the NRA and enact common sense gun safety. This kind of senseless violence will continue. It's not that DeSantis is bowing down to the NRA or anybody else that believes that we have the God-given right to defend ourselves by the means that are the most effective. It's not that at all. DeSantis is bowing down to the Constitution of the United States. Governor Newsom, if you don't like the Second Amendment, then by all means, amend the Constitution. Good luck. Good luck. Outrageous. Especially coming from a guy who has a phalanx of men with automatic weapons surrounding him 24/7, 365. It's ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. Well, DeSantis' press secretary, Jamie Redfern, replied shortly afterward. And did so beautifully, in fact. I'll have that for you coming up in just a couple of moments. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Let's see. There have been so many machete killings in Oklahoma. Please give details. The number one murder weapon in the world is a hammer or something like it. It's ridiculous. If everyone that currently owns or carries a gun today was the problem, we'd have constant violence in the street. 99.9%, I said 99.8%, of us are law-abiding citizens who pray we never need to use the weapons to defend ourselves. The very last thing that you want to ever have anything to do with is a gunfight. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. This is the Wells Report. It is Tuesday, May 30th, year of our Lord 2023. Politics taking the part of good sense in this nation is frustrating, annoying, divisive, ridiculous, and foolish. And it is part and parcel of life in the United States these days because people can't read the Constitution, which is plain. This subject is plain. Isaac Tate points out that the number one cause of murder is handguns. Yeah, that's not real. It's not real. That is a weaponization of the FBI. The statistics have changed for the sake of politics. I will, however, read, based on the FBI report, okay, does the FBI mean anything anymore? Number one, handguns, 8,029. Firearms, type not stated, 4,863. So that's what, 13,000? 13,000. Number three, knives or cutting instruments, 1,739. Personal weapons, fists, feet, 662. Rifles at 455. Let's see. Let me see if I can do some shaky math here. So 12,000 or so. Well, let's make it 13,000. Let's make it 15,000. Let's make it 16,000. Let's make it 16,500. And then blunted objects, hammers, etc., 393. So less than 20,000 people are murdered in the United States involving all kinds of weapons. I wonder how many of those, based on the FBI report. Well, the FBI is infallible, isn't it? Yeah, I compared rifles to hammers. No, I said that blunt instruments are the number one cause of murder in the history of the human endeavor. That's not arguable. Not arguable. It's ridiculous. Anyway, that being said, getting back to Governor Newsom, Redfern, who is actually Jeremy Redfern, said to Gavin Newsom, how does a law that doesn't take effect until July 1st change the outcome? It doesn't. It doesn't. The law allows eligible citizens 21 years of age and up to carry without asking the government for a permit and without paying a fee. The legislation does not change who is eligible to obtain a carry permit, which is still allowed by law and very much recommended by this reporter. Under existing Florida law, people who wish to obtain a license to carry a concealed weapon in public must be a citizen or lawful permanent resident of the U.S., be at least 21 years of age, desire a legal means to carry a concealed weapon for lawful self-defense, pass a fingerprint-based background check, complete a firearms training class, among other requirements, including proving you can actually shoot. Though the constitutional carry bill makes getting a license and these requirements voluntary, the federal government still requires licensed firearm dealers to run a background check on prospective buyers. Neither federal nor state law requires private sellers to conduct background checks, but if you buy a weapon from me, I'm checking your background. If you don't want your background checked, got to be a reason. I'm just not going to sell you one. Not going to do it. It's just not. Because it's irresponsible. Monday's shooting in Hollywood happened on a Hollywood oceanfront boardwalk near a convenience store, a Ben & Jerry's ice cream store, and a Subway sandwich shop. We already talked to you about the stats. And so, the only good thing about all this is that Gavin Newsom immediately rushed to judgment, said something stupid, and got called on it. That should tell you something about Gavin Newsom. The people that should be in leadership in this country need to be sober and reflective, analytical, deductive, possessors of critical thinking, and knowledge of what they are trying to accomplish based on the Constitution of the United States. Does Gavin Newsom have any of those things? This is the Wells Report. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will be back in 4 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you had a great weekend. By the way, as the Memorial Day weekend is about honoring our war dead, I must admit that I, along with 2 other veterans, went out and played golf yesterday. Make no mistake, I spent time reflecting on the loss of life of Texas State Guardsmen that I knew and loved. It was a hard evening. Still hard. But as I said before, life goes on and we must move forward to not just remember those people, but to also work to bring to life what they fought for to the point of dying. So I did, however, play golf last night or yesterday. And I have some news. For the first time in my life, I broke 90. I shot an 83. It was a Lake Park golf course. Okay? Lake Park golf course. I went through the 18-hole course and shot an 83. It was really cool. And there's a lot more room to go because I only hit 3 greens in regulation. I was scrambling, but that's one of the things about being a lousy golfer. You learn all those really difficult shots, more difficult than you need to make because you're just a lousy golfer. Anyway, those came to my rescue. So there you go. That's funny. Isaac says, since their inception, the purpose of firearms is to terminate life, whether it's an animal or for consumption or a foe. Okay. So, anyway, back to the work. I have been absolutely remorseless in my unrelenting criticism for the political control of money in the United States. I am so angry with the people that are theoretically responsible for making sure that that our money is spent wisely. We are $31.7 trillion in debt, and thanks to this wonderful agreement that appears to be able to come at the last second, something that I foretold was going to happen because this is just a really, really bad sitcom they've repeated the same episode too many times. Anyway, here's the latest. By the way, I can't help but bring this up by saying that June 1st was the absolute deadline. That's tomorrow. It's the absolute deadline. And then Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said, well, actually, it's the 15th. And then when we found out that there was possibly an agreement, she said, well, it's the 5th. Really? Why is it that the American government can't do anything when it comes to money, can't do anything that people do every single day in their houses, at their kitchen tables, working out a budget? How come they can't do that? Well, that's because we don't force them to. Perhaps we should change that. But we won't be doing it this time. President Joe Biden projected optimism that Congress will back his agreement to raise the national debt ceiling as the White House worked behind the scenes to rustle up votes. I feel very good about it, he told reporters outside the White House as he left Washington for Delaware, adding that he had spoken to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. I spoke to a whole bunch of people, and it feels good. Yeah. Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy struck a tentative agreement Saturday to raise the debt limit ceiling, actually not to raise the debt limit ceiling, but to erase it entirely until 2025 in exchange for a number of Republican demands to cut spending. As the text of the agreement became public, both sides were spending the Memorial Day weekend selling the plan. The agreement faces an early test today in the House Rules Committee. They've got to approve the procedure for bringing the legislation to the floor. The administration warned Congress that they must raise the debt ceiling by June 5th or risk tripping the nation into the first default in U.S. history. Only if you're incompetent. When asked yesterday what he would say to progressive Democrats who have reservations about the compromise, Biden said, talk to me. He declined to go into further detail. Look, what this is instead of the Republicans forcing the Republicans to deal with $4.5 trillion of spending cuts, it's now somewhere around $2.5 trillion, which will raise the U.S. national debt to what? $32.4 trillion? $32.2 trillion. That's money that's being spent on behalf of our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and probably our great-great-grandchildren. What are we doing? What are they doing? The Republican Party should have said what should have followed Donald Trump's advice. Just go ahead and default. It's going to happen anyway. Why don't you just go ahead and get it out of the way now? Well, I would have to agree that there are certain things that are true and immutable, not just in this nation, not just in this government, but indeed in the solar system, the galaxy, and the universe. You can only defy gravity for just so long. And we've been defying gravity to the tune of $31.7 trillion. Defying gravity is expensive. It really is. We have the wrong people running the government. And what did they do? What leads the league when it comes to this ridiculous quote-unquote agreement? Well, we're not going to have a debt ceiling until 2025, until after the next election. This is embezzlement. This is embezzlement. And nothing more and nothing less. It's irritating, and it's irritating on every level. The Republican Party is somehow claiming that they were able to have some kind of a political victory insofar as they didn't let the Democrats spend as much money as they wanted to, and then made it possible for the Democrats to spend as much money as they wanted to. You know, we were talking about the Second Amendment a moment ago, talking about how when leftists say that people who believe that people ought to be able to defend themselves with the weapons that criminals use, that Gavin Newsom said, well, that's bowing down to the NRA. No, it's bowing down to the Constitution of the United States. I think I'm the only person to say that. I don't know why I'm the only person to say that, but apparently I am. Yeah. By the way, I think Ronald Reagan spent $3 trillion. No, that was the budget. Whatever. Anyway, so the circumstance goes like this. So we have a government that is still runaway spenders. Runaway spenders. And there are a lot of different reasons why. But getting back to what I was talking about a second ago, and one of the main reasons why, is that we are so busy being distracted by attacks on the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, most of the Bill of Rights. We're so busy being distracted by that we don't see the real need for a constitutional amendment. And here it is. Whereas this nation has a government that is proven to be irresponsible with the public debt, we, the people of the United States, hereby amend the Constitution. This would be the 28th Amendment. Hereby amend the Constitution, limiting the federal government to 15% of gross domestic product as a spending cap. My God, it won't be enough money. Yeah, it'll be enough money. It'll be plenty. It'll actually be more than they need. But what we have to do is we have to rein in this government in no uncertain terms. Now, this would go hand in hand to essentially tell the government to stop playing around with the Constitution and encourage everybody who listens to a politician talk about something that is unconstitutional, to immediately vote them out of office. That is a disqualifier. Gone. You're not going to swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and then go and try to erode the Constitution to get it out of the way of your political delirium. Sorry, it's not going to work. So we limit the government to 15% of our gross domestic product from a standpoint of what they can spend. What does this do? It forces the government of the United States to grow the government. It also forces the United States of America to break up gigantic defense contractors into smaller defense contractors, thereby creating competition. It also puts us in a situation where we do not need to fund the endless appetite for taxpayer dollars by this federal government. We must indeed reduce the federal government to something more resembling the constitutional limits on its power. There are some constitutional limits that are obsolete, but most of them are not. And certainly the philosophy behind the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they are absolutely valid to this very day. And they should be treated as such. And those are this. We have a limited government. It does small things. They're not actually small. They're more like big, dumb things. Big, dumb things. We need, say, for example, a bigger interstate highway system. We've lived with the current the current interstate system for, since 1950. It's coming up on, 73 years? What we need a bigger interstate highway system. We should put 2 more lanes on each interstate everywhere. So there are 4 instead of 2. It's obsolete. But we can't do that when we're $31.7 trillion in national debt. We can't do it. By limiting the amount of money the government can spend of the gross domestic product, they have to grow the gross domestic product to be able to do any of this spending, which means a bigger a bigger economy for all of us. A rising tide lifts all boats. Who said that? Ronald Reagan. That's who said that. Wrong. It was John F. Kennedy who said that. A rising tide lifts all boats. We're not going to get there by electing the same people over and over and over. These people are stealing from us to the tune of $31.7 trillion, and they want to add more. We have gigantic government infragovernments known as corporations who are not forced to comport with the Constitution of the United States. That's something else we have to change. We can do that through the U.S. Code. And I would love to see the lawsuits being thrown by these corporations at laws that say you will be compliant with the Constitution of the United States. I would just love to see the arguments in courtrooms from around the country as these corporations say, well, the Constitution is, it's in your way. Next case. Outrageous. It would be the greatest reality television show in history. It would. Well, we need to break up these gigantic corporations into competitors instead of dictators. We need to stop letting these people essentially try to, in Latin, bullus faculitis. We need to stop them from doing that. Yes, I looked it up. Why do you keep electing these people? Why is it? We elect one party that facilitates the political delirium and ravings of another party. Well, they keep it from being more expensive. Yeah, they should fight it tooth and nail. But we don't have the people in any political party with the guts to make the hard calls, because politics is more important than reality right now. And we've got to do something about that. This is the Wells Report. Back with more coming up in just a couple of seconds. Thanks for being with us today. The last day of May, 2023. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. When I was supposedly learning how to do mathematics, they came up with something called New Math. New Math was a disaster. I am proof of it. As my life has unfolded, not only did I have trouble with letters and numbers, but now I'm having trouble with calendars. May has 31 days, not 30. Okay. Thanks, Mikey. See, when you mix letters and numbers, it's disastrous for me. Okay, so this gives you an idea of just how stupid politics can be. The Russians issued an arrest warrant for Senator Lindsey Graham. It happened yesterday. Russian officials announced a warrant for Graham's arrest after the senator accused Russia of war crimes in Ukraine and said the U.S. military aid to Ukraine was, quote, the best money we've ever spent, unquote. Graham made the comments in a videoed meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He now says he will submit to the judgment of the International Criminal Court if Russia decides to do the same. Here's an offer to my Russian friends, he says, who want to arrest and try me for calling out the Putin regime as being war criminals. I will submit to the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court if you do. Come and make your best case. See you in The Hague. Graham stated he considers the arrest warrant to be a badge of honor. U.S. estimates say Russian forces have killed 42,000 Ukrainians. That's the civilian population. And the invasion began in February of 2022. Officials also said 50,000 Russian soldiers have been killed, which continues to rise. 180,000 have been wounded. That is propaganda. Ukrainian forces have also suffered greatly. 20,000 killed, 130,000 wounded in the past 15 months. To know that my commitment to Ukraine has drawn the ire of the Putin regime brings me immense joy. I will continue to stand with and for Ukrainian freedom, until every Russian soldier is expelled from Ukrainian territory. Graham's spat with Putin came as both Moscow and Kiev suffered drone attacks. Russia has launched wave after wave of missiles, drones, and bombs against the Ukrainian capital. Tuesday's attack on Moscow was the first time the Russian capital has received similar treatment. Yeah, that's one of the things about war. You get hit too. Moscow's residents reported hearing explosions. The defense ministry later said 8 drones had been fired in the city or at the city in a terrorist attack by the Kiev regime. The ministry said 5 drones were shot down. The systems of 3 were jammed, forcing them off course. Yeah, a terrorist attack on the Kiev regime, says the Russian defense ministry. Well, what do they call their own work in Ukraine, if not terrorism? So the circumstance goes like this. I am a proud American. I am a proud American. If I was Lindsey Graham and also had the backing of the United States government, which is iffy, that's an iffy proposition. But if I was Lindsey Graham and had the backing of the United States government, I would book the next flight to Moscow. I'd find a really, really good Russian restaurant. By the way, Russian restaurants, Russian food is very much like American food. It's really incredible, actually. Their fried potatoes are delicious. Anyway, that being said, I would immediately go to Moscow and I'd sit there and say, go ahead and arrest me. And if one of those black bands showed up and a bunch of guys wearing masks and plate carriers and so on and so forth came into the restaurant and arrested me, I would assure you that now, if I was not Lindsey Graham, but actually the president of the United States, I'd put the country at DEFCON 3 and I'd send the B-2 bombers to their fail-safe points immediately. And then I would say this, Vladimir, you have exactly 24 hours to release every American in custody in Russia, no questions asked, unconditional release of U.S. citizens. And that would be that. Because a former great superpower with an economy the particle of what it once was could not reasonably expect to be able to do anything except say, yes, sir, Mr. President, I'll be more than happy to get that done. And by the way, the 24-hour thing, you're not going to keep Lindsey Graham in jail for 24 hours. I'll give you 24 minutes to put him back in that restaurant, reorder his dinner, and let him enjoy it, and then we'll fly him home. Allowing these people to push us around like this is dangerous. This is a perfect opportunity to do something that the Russians have no stomach for. And we should, by God, do it. Have a nice flight, Lindsey. And make sure you keep an astute diary of everything they do to you in a Russian jail. This has been the Wells Report. God bless all y'all. Take good care, and I'll see you on the last day of May tomorrow, which is the 31st. I'm dumb. This has been the Wells Report. God bless you. I'll see